Okay, letting everyone in. Sorry, that was me. Rania, you're all set.
All right, are we ready to get started? Awesome. Hello, everyone. Welcome in. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Rania Zayat, and I'm the founder and president of Lift Collective. We are so excited to have you and to host this conversation this evening. This is the Sustainable Entrepreneurship Roundtable discussion. It is the first of one of 4 roundtable discussions in the newly launched Lift Collective Entrepreneurship Program. We're really excited to host this and make it available to the public. We have some incredible speakers joining us tonight and a wonderful moderator, Maryam Ahmed. So I will go ahead and turn it over to them, but we will keep an eye on the chat. Feel free to ask questions, make comments, and hopefully be engaged.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maryam. I did it as fast as I could. Welcome. We're very excited for all of you to be here tonight. I am also running the back end of the Zoom, so just give us a couple seconds in the transitions, but we're thrilled to have all of you. I see some very friendly faces. Please, if you have a moment, put in the chat where you're dialing in from. I think we have a large part of the US represented tonight. So everyone take a moment to do that. And I'm going to bring our speakers up on the screen to introduce themselves and to talk a little bit about our entrepreneurial journey. And while I do that, please take the second to drop your location in the chat so we can see. You want this to be a conversation and a connecting opportunity too. Okay. Tish, here we go. Hi, Fiona from Walla Walla. Laura, just as an aside, everyone can see on the screen. I was going to ask you a question, Laura. When you trade with Amy, please don't hesitate to let me know because I can't spotlight Amy until her video's on. So just FYI, as you all can see tonight, we're also welcoming 2 ASL interpreters. Lift Collective is, yes, paving the way for accessibility throughout their programs. And it's very, very important and truly something that we could all do simply for our businesses and for the programs that we participate in and put on. So I'm very excited to have Laura and Amy here interpreting. What that means just throughout the evening is we will have a moment, more than a few, to come off mute and to talk because this is a roundtable, but it's very important that the interpreters have an idea of who will be speaking and that we don't speak over each other. So if you could use the reactions function, which is at the bottom of your Zoom screen, to raise your hand. That way we just know, who will be speaking next, and also gives a chance for everyone to respond to anything you might say. And if you have any questions, you can directly message myself or Rania. Laura and Amy will be very tapped into what is being talked about, so they can't see the messages in real time, okay? I think we're all good. I saw a lot of nodding heads. So without further ado, we're going to jump into talking about being a sustainable entrepreneur. And, everyone here is going to take some time to introduce themselves. You have some folks who have really span of career from anywhere, from the beginning. I'm year 2 in my business all the way to multi-decade entrepreneurs. And so this is a very exciting opportunity for everyone to ask questions and to sort of also understand how entrepreneurial journeys can unfold. We also do recognize, though, that there are folks from all over the wine industry during this conversation. So that's not to say that something won't apply to you that's completely unrelated maybe to your day today. And so with that, that's how entrepreneurship works. A lot of times you create a partnership that you wouldn't have thought of just by being in the same room with other folks and bridging skills. So I'm going to have all of our panelists introduce themselves, and then I'll round it out, introducing a little bit more about what we're going to talk about. But to get us started, I'm going to have Dr. Atira Charles introduce herself, if you don't mind.
Hello, everybody. Good evening or afternoon, depending on where we are. I'm Dr. Atira Charles. I am a lifelong lover of all things diversity and inclusion and entrepreneurship. I have my PhD in organizational behavior, and at a young age decided I wanted to make my life's work understanding issues of diversity and inclusion in the workplace. And I've done that from a series of spaces as a professor in academia, as a researcher and a scholar, as a head of diversity in a wines and spirits company, and of course, running my own business, which I'll talk a lot about today. So I just want to say thank you for having me here, and I am so excited about this event.
Thank you. Ray?
Hi, I'm honored to be on this panel. It's really been just incredible to see kind of some of these programs with Lift Collective come together. I'm Ray Wilson. My company is Wine for the People. I am a winemaker and entrepreneur based in Austin, Texas. And it has been a career that came out of hospitality and evolved into something where I wanted to build something of my own in the industry and start my own productions. And it's been an unexpected place to do it, but an exciting one as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Regine?
Hi, everyone. My name is Regine Rousseau. My company is Shall We Wine. I am in Chicago, Illinois, and I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to meet all of you, to hear from you and where you are in your journey as entrepreneurs.
And Tish?
Hello, everyone. I am Tish Wiggins, affectionately known as Tish Around Town. I'm based between Atlanta and Dallas now. My wine career kind of started with my love of wine when I took my first trip to Napa 20-some years ago. And from there, it was more of a passion, and then that passion came into something that I really wanted to take the time to share. I've had my brand Tish Around Town for about 8 years now, but I've really transitioned more into wine in the last 3 to 5 years. Tish Around Town, and I plan events centered around food, wine, spirits, and travel, and I do wine education. And earlier this year, I launched my first inaugural event, the Celebration of Women of Wine, when I took 20 wine enthusiasts into Napa Valley for an immersive, personal, giving everyone a personal side of the wine industry and giving some fun along the way. So I'm Tish.
Thank you, everyone. And I'm Maryam. I'm based in Napa, California. I'm the owner of Maryam & Company. We consult on wine education programs, strategic initiatives, basically anything that's helping to further sustainability or diversity initiative within the sphere of wine and, of course, food, because you have to have both. And speaking of that, I'm sitting in my new kitchen studio that I'm a partner in called Plate Kitchen. So I'm sort of spinning off an additional entrepreneurial journey as well. So very excited to tell everyone more about that. And I think also what we wanted to do just really quickly, again, addressing this idea that we're all coming from different entrepreneurial backgrounds and models, is just to quickly go around and say what the structure of our business is. So I'll just start and then we can go back around in the same order if that's all right. Maryam Company is an LLC. Plate Kitchen is also an LLC. The difference is single member versus multi-member. I know that's coming up in the curriculum as far as the Lift Collective Entrepreneurship Program. And I am a solopreneur with Maryam and Company. So I hire independent contractors to support different strategic projects that I'm working on internally and with clients. Atira?
Hello, my business is called the Charles Consulting Group. It was called Think Actuality before, but we'll talk about name changes and brand changes a little later. That happens sometimes. So yeah, it's Charles Consulting Group. It's an LLC. I would consider myself a solopreneur that loves to delegate and find amazing contractors to work with me, because you can't do this work alone all the time. So that's my structure.
So I'm Ray, and my company, I started as a consultant. And so I started as an LLC, and I started it under Wine for the People was the original name as my consulting company. Once I started producing wines, I started a second LLC, which is Nips Cellars, because legally as a producer, I need to have its own entity to hold the kind of both federal and state permits to produce wine. So I have that. Wine for the People continues on as kind of essentially the marketing arm and the kind of the outfront brand of what then my production company produces to bring to the market.
Awesome. Regine?
So again, my company, Shall We Wine, we are a strategic marketing company working with wine and spirits brands. We are a corporation, we're S Corporation. And we decided to become a S Corporation really 10 years ago. Our attorney just thought it was the best entity for us. And we have, I had one full-time employee that didn't work out. And I also hire contractors to help the business run.
And Regine, did you start as an LLC before you shifted to S Corp,
No.
or started
No.
as an S Corp? Okay.
Mhm.
Great. Tish?
Tish Around Town is a LLC. I am definitely a solopreneur, but I'm a firm believer of partnerships. So I actually partner with quite a few brands to be able to kind of bring some of the projects that I work on to life.
Awesome. So, and I'll just add, the LLC that I have right now is undergoing new articles of incorporation to become an S Corp. So, as your business grows, sometimes that becomes an option. So I'm shifting the structure of my business right now and undergoing simultaneously a B Corp certification, which does not impact your articles of incorporation, but it does ask that you amend your articles of incorporation to say that you are decentralizing profitability from the main reason your business exists. So again, that's later, but just wanted everyone to have that idea of where we were coming from structurally. Now, I wanted to jump into actually defining sustainable entrepreneurship. So we're going to define it now and then talk about elements of it for the rest of the time before we open it up to general conversation and questions. The reason we're having everyone define it is because it is different for everyone. And the entrepreneurship journey is different, as well as how you define what success looks like to you or what sustainability looks like. Ideally, they're synonymous. So I'm going to open it up to whoever's ready to answer that question first. Whoever wants to jump in, go ahead.
Jump in. So when we first started even talking about this title, I said, okay, well, which direction are we going? Are we going in the eco direction? Are we going in the social impact direction? But after, some of our prep calls and talking, I really loved the direction we went in. And for me, sustainable means what it means, like, how can it stay, right? What's the staying power? And, as a Black woman entrepreneur, the staying power of a business is something that is always top of mind for me. And so I think about sustainability in the context of time, right? And surviving through. Now, here's the thing about time and sustainability. It doesn't have to look the same in every season, right? But as long as you can continue to move forward with the vision and mission, and as long as you can continue to have impact, and as long as you can continue to have profitability, because let's call it a business is business, right? And we want to be profitable in that space. And I'd say as long as you can keep a presence, right, in your industry or in your field amongst your peers. And so those are the metrics that I use to measure my sustainability as a business owner.
Awesome. Thank you. Anyone like to go next?
Just to add to that, I'm going to say what she said. So all of that. But, I think sustainability for me also has this internal personal definition, right? Am I willing? Am I able? Right? Do I want this enough to continue the journey? I think that's a big part of sustainability for me. I think someone's jumping in and has a question. No?
I think it's just a mute.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Thanks, Regine. Ray or Tish?
I would say that for me, when I think about sustainability, when we first started to talk about this conversation, and similar to what Dr. Charles said, I think the first word that comes to mind is survival. Sustainability equals survival. And then I think that for me, thinking about from a profitability perspective, how long is it going to be profitable? If it's something that's not profitable, I mean, I know you're going to have some times that something isn't profitable, and you got your time periods that you're going to go through. Sometimes it's not making as much money as you may think it should make, but you do have to be able to gauge that. And then I think at the same time, how long is that business going to be relevant? Because we also have to think ahead a little bit. I can be developing something that can be old in 2 years, or not used in 2 years. So how do we continue to stay relevant in the actual industry that we're in? So those are kind of the three things: kind of survival, profitability, and then being relevant.
Ray?
Yeah, I mean, all of those are excellent points. I'd say that my own would be one of just, I think constantly, like Tish said, trying to stay relevant, but really looking at how I need to evolve to continue. When I started my company as a consultant, it was in 2010, and what I was doing and how I was doing it and what, success looked like then was very different, as it's now evolved to a very different type of business. So it's evolving the skills internally, but also very much looking at how I can bring other people and ideas and I think just connections to really then ultimately define the business where it's no longer just me, because then that's not really where I want to end up, and kind of looking at that goal as being something that is evolving, but starting with a rather, direct way of needing just to kind of, means to an end, and something that I was interested in, and then really looking at what I want to build and what types of things I want to build and contribute to in my community, and also how to how to, I think, cultivate other parts that are going to come in outside of just myself into the business.
Yeah. I totally agree about what everyone's saying. Like sustainable entrepreneurship, it has to do, right, with are we gonna make it, but also are we gonna thrive? I think sometimes not amongst this group, not all of us, but it can be that we synonymize sacrifice with entrepreneurship, and I don't agree with that as a way of life personally. And I think, so my addition to that is if I'm being a sustainable entrepreneurship, my body and my mind feel sustainable in addition to my business. Because while I love working with independent contractors, my name is on the company. And at the end of the day, right, it's all of us who are legally bound to these organizations. And it's very important that I feel like I can continue not just strategically, but also healthily. So I would just add that my definition of sustainable entrepreneurship is not worrying about the next check, and also being able to take care of myself and my wellness.
We're going to switch interpreters.
Thank you so much. Stand by. Okay, Amy, I see you. Thank you. Here we go. Okay, Now we can all be on. Okay. Thank you, Amy. So what I was going to lead into is we have this glossy version also of entrepreneurship. I said sometimes we synonymize it with sacrifice, but then there's also this glossy version. And also we don't always use really specific examples, especially in like a panel discussion. And it's very important to all of us here that we are as specific and vulnerable as possible so that you all leave with the most actionable information possible. So I asked everyone to just think about what their ideal day as a sustainable entrepreneur looks like, because that is different for everybody. I'd also ask everyone who's here to feel free to answer that in the chat, because that's another opportunity of networking similarly and through differences too, right? So for the ideal day in your life, Ray, I'm gonna have you go first. Because you're in harvest mode at the moment.
Exactly. That's not an easy thing to answer. I don't think it any day, but definitely during this time of year. I mean, I would say this, I'd say that what I love and yet what is a challenge is that there are so many parts of the business and it's so wide ranging that I touch and need to touch directly. So on the production side, I mean, I am the winemaker. I am out at every pick, at every vineyard and in the cellar through the entire harvest season. Luckily, I'm not the only one in the cellar. I do have, I do work in a broader cellar where I have a cellar team that can also execute. But nothing, the rest of the business doesn't slow down just because harvest comes around. So, as that is going, trying to kind of maintain and structure things where, things are not kind of falling away, whether that be at the tasting room, which has its own set of employees, to just general admin, to being able to participate in kind of larger community events and things like that. But the endlessness of that is, I think, many days pretty overwhelming, which I think definitely adds to the challenge of feeling like I'm ever reaching a goal of sustainability. But I also think that the various parts of the business, certain parts of time, including the harvest time, really give me just a very different type of experience, which is it's a different type of a task. Something shows up and you do the task and it's complete. And then there are other types of tasks and work within the business that are ongoing and will always be, and they're always evolving. So I'd say that I don't know how to answer that with just one answer, but I'd say that having really kind of positive structures in place with capable people, as well as then during the harvest season, where I can also kind of balance that out with just physically doing a task and getting tired and feeling like it's finished at the end of the day or something has been accomplished.
Yeah. Okay. Who else wants to share their ideal day?
I can go. So my ideal day, so just to give you guys a little bit of background, I still actually have my full-time job in IT. So I'm a IT project manager in the banking industry. I manage from, God, I don't even know how many people is under me right now, but I have resources between India and the United States, and I manage basically a customer system application within a bank that's based out of Chicago and Canada. So my day is kind of interesting sometimes because of the fact that I'm usually posted with two computers and I'm going from one world to another constantly throughout the day. For me, some of the advantages, quite a few advantages that I do have is that I work 100% remote from home and my full-time job. And I've worked 100% remote from home for quite a few years prior to COVID. So I've always had that flexibility. So, have laptop, will travel with internet in tow. And so a lot of times you can kind of see me kind of perched around the United States and doing different things. But at the same time, I'm still sometimes working my full-time job. The other thing is that I try to make sure that I can incorporate some me time at the same time, and I'm learning to give myself grace. Probably in the last year, year and a half, we had COVID, we had everything else going on. At the same time, I'm one person, I'm a solopreneur, and still, wanting to make that leap, wanting to make that transition, but I'm just still need to get the business to a certain place to be able to do that. Another thing, I try to make sure that when I take my me time, and people think this is funny when I tell them this, but if anyone knows me personally, I love to dance. So at least once a day, I have a dance break. And that is like my kind of outlet in the day. So when someone else may, take a little break to go get coffee or water, I just turn on one of my songs, or something comes on and I like it and I want to dance to it, and I just dance, and I dance as if I have a disco ball above my head every time I start dancing. And so that's one of my ways that I kind of disconnect from the day, and I give myself some relief. So basically, I am a ping pong right now, hoping to stop that ping pong game that I'm playing, but I spend a lot of time, kind of always tell my friends I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul. And a lot of time, but I am very blessed to have the structure that I have in my work environment, that I can kind of bounce back and forth, and that I have a lot of flexibility with my full-time job. I would not be able to do what I'm doing now without the type of flexibility that I have with my full-time job.
Atira, you were going to jump in.
Yeah, so I feel really good. I feel like I'm living my ideal day right now. And that feels really good after years and years of working towards this. And I used to say, I have 3 kids, 11th grader and 2 7th grade, 11th grade daughters, 2 7th grade boys. And I told myself that by the time my kids get to junior high, high school, I want to be able to be as present with them as I can be. And I feel like I'm living that now, but I also said that I wanted to be at a place where my rate and my fee is at a place where if I'm not working all the time, I could still hit the money marks that I really want to make. And I feel like I'm at that place. Of course, who doesn't want to go higher? But if life never changed today, I could ride out the way my life is right now, with my ability to be fully present with the kids. And also now, I'm also a binge worker. So I tend to schedule my days really crazy. So I may have 4 keynotes in a day and then have 4 or 5 days where I don't have any engagements, right? And that gives me the flexibility. So I tend to, and you have to know yourself for that, right? Like some people would say, oh my gosh, I couldn't speak for 7 hours in a day. That's too much. Because a lot of the work I do is speaking and training and facilitation. But I like to binge talk. My friends and family will say, you could talk for days, and I can. I'm glad I get paid to do it. But I'm also glad that I'm able to structure my time in a way that allows me to travel. And I also have to say that the COVID era led to that, right? Because I can do 4 or 5 keynotes in a day now. I couldn't do that pre-COVID. I can't be in 4 cities. I'm pretty awesome, but I'm not that awesome, right? To be able to be in 4 cities in one day. And so that has actually helped my business model, right? Overall. So I think as we think about COVID, a lot of times we talk about some of the negatives, but I think there's opportunities for us to frame our day in that way. I also keep a lot of entrepreneurs close to me. So through the day, we're able to talk and speak. And I have my whole immediate family, my brothers, my mom, everybody's an entrepreneur. So I really have created like an entrepreneurship ecosystem around me through the day, because I'm an extrovert and I feel lonely through the day sometimes. And I think for those that are in a solopreneur space, you need to know yourself. Like I come in 100% on extroversion on every leadership survey I take, like 100%. I think only 2% of the world is like that. So I love people and I can talk all the time, but it's different when I do it for work. So when I'm doing it for non-work, it has to really be with people who understand, right? And can fill your cup up in a different type of way. And I'm grateful for all those people in my life that do that.
Such a good point. Regine?
Yeah, so, when I created Shall We Wine back in 2013, I created a business plan based on who I am and what I wanted. Completely selfish. I sat on a couch and I decided, what do I want to do? And I don't know of any business program that tells you that this is the route to go, but at that point in my career, I've worked in sales and marketing. I'd owned a business. And I thought, okay, what is it that is going to make Regine happy? So every day since that day in 2013 has been about creating a life, creating a day that fulfills me. So what does that look like? Well, for me, it looks like doing something hard. I try to do something that's difficult for me every day because that's where I thrive. You know, when I do that thing that's really challenging to me. I walk every day. That is my moment of peace. So I make sure that that's a part of my everyday routine. I do something creative every day. You know, I am as much a creative as I am an entrepreneur. So if that means, you know, taking 10 minutes to write, taking 10 minutes to do a video, anything that I find that's creative. So those are like my perfect day is really about challenging myself, about being creative and really seeding into the life that I decided to create for myself 10 years ago.
Thank you. For me, an ideal day, I'm a lot like Atira. Like I could have 8 meetings in one day and not necessarily feel depleted, but I have to be really mindful about what that next day looks like. My recovery time is really big, especially on travel weeks or speaking weeks. But I would just say on my day today, I moved my body and I nourished myself. I love to cook. And I like that brings a different challenge to my mind at the end of the day of, you know, nowadays being on my computer a lot of the time. So ideal day has some me time in it too. Like Tish said, I don't mind a dance break either, to be fair. So, so I'm actually going to come back to you, Regine. And I think, you know, you came in to Shall We Wine, like as an S Corp with this really strong idea of what you wanted to build. Can you just talk us through your entry point into entrepreneurship? Like, how did that happen?
Well, I've been an entrepreneur, I think, since I was a child, you know, so my father's an entrepreneur. And I know that I got that from him and watching him. And, you know, it's interesting because when I was younger, I would not have defined my father as a successful entrepreneur. But knowing what I know now, he is a successful entrepreneur because he is 78 right now, and he has still find ways of creating his income, right? And even though it didn't look like the magazine covers, right? He sustained entrepreneurship. And it's interesting, I had a conversation with him a few years ago, asking him the question, like, why did you become an entrepreneur? And I thought he was going to give me this, you know, like it was my passion, you know, but it was because he felt discriminated against as a Black man. And entrepreneurship was his out. It was his way of creating his own destiny. So anyway, to answer your question, I've always been an entrepreneur. I studied theater in college, but I wanted to direct more than I wanted to act. And directing and production is very much on, you know, being an entrepreneur. So I actually started Shall We Wine back in 97, 98, when I was in the wine business and I was selling wine. And I started doing these pop-up events for consumers. Didn't have the skill set back in 98 to actually make this a viable business. And so I went into corporate America to make money, to really gather a lot of skills that I don't think I would have gotten anywhere else. So, you know, whatever we say about corporate America, for me, it was a foundation that helped me build a successful business. So went through the whole journey with corporate America. I started another business in 2010. I started a salon with a partner. And then in that was 2006. And then in 2013, you know, after I had my experience as an entrepreneur, having a storefront, having marketing experience, I decided, okay, I'm ready. And I recreated or rebranded Shall We Wine into what it is today. So.
Thank you for sharing all of that. Atira, would you go next? You're not muted, you're good.
Oh, okay. And what are we specifically answering again? Because I
your
thought
entry
you were answering
point.
the last question.
Your entry point into entrepreneurship.
Yes. So I would beg to say that I love that Regine said childhood, right? Because for me, I've only known entrepreneurship in my household. My mom went to college and then she decided she wanted to leave and start her own business. My grandparents that were two public servants, a social worker and a detective, NYPD, decided that they would invest in all three of their children's entrepreneurship endeavors. And this is in 1980. Right. So that's really major if you just think about time frame and in our Black community with entrepreneurship. And so they bought a commercial property in New York City and had 3 doors and gave each of their kids a door and said, whatever business you want to build, it's yours to do. And the businesses were successful and thriving. So growing up, one of the things my mom always said was, look, I kill it in entrepreneurship, but I didn't finish school. And I think that for you all to take it to the next step, me and my brothers, you all need to finish school so that you have a new set of tools, right, that I can't give you or teach you. And so I knew I wanted to go into business from the time I was doing ledgers with my mom and my grandfather when I was in junior high school. And so that always stayed top of mind. So even when I went to get my PhD, I wanted to stay focused on business. And I knew even though I was planning on going into academia, I knew that consulting and business was always going to be a primary thing. And for those of you that may not know, in academia, they kind of shy you away from jumping into entrepreneurship early on in your career. And my mom, one day, I told her, I said, I don't think they're going to be happy that I'm doing all these speaking engagements. She said, God gave you a light, let it shine. And literally, anytime I think about dimming my light or, oh, well, maybe this will be perceived a certain way, I just always go back to what my mom said about letting my light shine. And I've been doing it ever since. And so I just want to share with everyone that's on their journey at whatever point, there has to be a motivator, right? Like an intrinsic inside personal motivator that keeps you. And I always tell myself that if my 2 grandparents that were not wealthy at all could create a wealth path for our family for multiple generations, then I can do the same thing too, even on the worst days. And so that's what I continue to focus on, even when I want to close my computer down, which was very quickly after June 2020.
Thank you. Wow. Incredible stories. Ray and Tish, you both alluded to your transition into entrepreneurship and your pending transition into entrepreneurship. So Ray, why don't you just finish that thought around your entry point and fill in anything that you feel like you left out?
Yeah. Wow, that's such an incredible and inspiring story of your grandparents. It's really just so moving. What incredible foresight. I think, yeah, I came from a family that is also all I knew was entrepreneurship, and neither of my parents had completed any kind of secondary schooling. They were both very creative, both musicians, and I grew up not much different, wanting to play music and doing photography and creative endeavors. But then, of course, that put me trying to make financial ends meet in different ways. So it's naturally then a creative place it puts you. So luckily, that creative mind and the kind of watching them, I'd agree or relate to Regine's reference to feeling like I'd look at my parents and not always associate them with successful entrepreneurship, and yet that's I've learned much better now that they both were incredibly creative in making it happen with children, and just even now on their own to continue sustaining themselves, still with their own businesses. So I think, I came to it somewhat just naturally and out of just a need, because I didn't really I was very strongly tied and motivated to the idea that I was only going to play music for the rest of my life. And yet that is a fairly hard thing to do to, pay the bills. So I think it naturally put me into a place where I was in hospitality, and it then grew into an unexpected passion. And then like with anything, I mean, I think I don't know how to do something halfway. So, I mean, I just dove really deep into this kind of interest. And funny enough, around me, I had other musician friends who, one was a food writer and one was a sommelier, and and all of a sudden I'm spending these times with these other creative people, kind of diving deeper into what would then turn into a very different career path. But I think the model of entrepreneurship mainly being really tied to just on the most creative level every day of what is it that I want to do to kind of allow myself to do these other creative endeavors, and then having those become kind of more in the same channel was exciting. And I think then a natural place to be was to try to figure out how to build my own model of that, and then that new channel. So yeah, that's pretty much the beginnings.
Thanks. Tish?
Well, my story is still being written for this transition. It's coming. It's coming really soon. And if I have to be very honest, it's fear. At the end of the day, it's fear. And being able to take that leap of faith. For me, this is a second career for me. Wine is a second career for me. I think for some, it's they had maybe a bridgeway into wine. It's a semi-second career for them. They've had some type of connection to it before. For me, I've been in computers and IT and numbers and bank accounts and all of that, pretty much all of my career. So to do something that's such a big, drastic change, that presents some fear for me in itself. And at the same time, I'm just trying to build, my arsenal in the back to make sure that when I do take this leap of faith, I can continue to stay over in the leap of faith. And so now now I'm at the place that I need to take the leap of faith, and I just really need to just bet on myself. And so I'm just ready to take the transition. It'll probably be happening in the next 6 to 8 months, if not sooner. A lot of great doors are open, a lot of great opportunities. Received some interesting and fun emails today that made me say, oh my gosh, okay, it might be sooner than I think. So it's just a matter, I think it's just me right now. If I'm very honest with myself, I'm in my own way right now. And I just got to get from out of my own way.
You got it, girl.
But it's happening. I know. What's so funny is that this panel discussion is good for me too. So thank you. Thank you, ladies. And thank you, audience, for being here. And I know you guys are going to ask some amazing questions that's going to continue to, ignite and engage this conversation. But to be on this panel is just an honor. And to hear the stories is an honor too. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tish, for sharing that very real. Yes, Regine, one sec, I was just going to say that very real take on the leap, because even as you say, the fear, I can feel my heart pitter patter in a way too. But I was just going to say, I met a really amazing entrepreneur that worked in Oakland, and her take on fear as an acronym was false evidence appearing real. And I have always sort of had that well, wait a second, let's reassess this fear. Where is it coming from? Because she reframed it. And I loved that reframe for me. I can put it in the chat too. Regine, what were you going to say?
I just wanted to offer a different perspective. So when I speak, especially to college-age students, I teach them to say, when someone's a naysayer, to say, thank you for your opinion, but your fear is not my reality, right? However, I want to say this: entrepreneurship is not just about this emotional feeling. It's about numbers.
Yeah.
Okay?
Oh, I do want to move into that. I do want to move into that, Regine.
Okay, but let me say what I'm going to say. I got to get this out. So, Tish, make sure that maybe what the fear is not, okay, you're not getting in your own way, but if the numbers don't add up for you yet, maybe your job is your angel investor. I've heard a lot of people tell entrepreneurs, girl, quit your job. No, ma'am, we ain't quitting nothing, because we need to eat, we need to survive, we need to take care of things. There is a time to leave. There is a way to exit gracefully. When I started Shall We Wine, I was a consultant for 2 years at a small salary, working part-time, but that salary helped me seed into my business. So just make sure that when you decide to leave, your numbers are in place, and then you can take that leap, because it's not cute to be broke. No. Okay, I'm gonna get off my high horse now.
No, Regine, just to go back on that, that is probably the biggest piece in this. And this is another piece of transparency, because we're all friends here. I'm embarking on a milestone age. I'll be 50. So I think that if someone who is 25 or 30 or 35, their leap is different. My leap consists of a few other things, because I want to retire in like 10 years. So my leap also has to consist of being able to sustain that I want to be going into retirement, versus that if I was 25 or 35, I still got time to build. So so Regine, what you're saying is basically what I'm doing. I'm using that job to be able to be basically that angel investor into this business, to be able to sustain, so that when I do take this leap, I am able to sustain it. So I think that, part of this conversation, I think, is also, it depends on where you are in your life, is how you're able to navigate entrepreneurship too. I think that does play a role. I think your age and where you are, your family structure, who you're responsible for, who you're not responsible for. I mean, it just changes. So thank you, Regine. You are correct in that aspect.
I'm usually correct.
These are things I already know.
Earlier today. Something else I think, connecting the dots on that is money and emotions are connected, right? So I was a full-time professor at Florida A&M University, which is also my alma mater. I felt very closely connected to that job, not only because I love teaching, but because it was the same classrooms that built me into who I am, right? And so I was doing my business the same time the business was growing, and I kept making new milestones. Okay, well, when I make this with the business, I'm going to stop teaching. Okay, well, when I make this with the business, I'm going to stop teaching. I did it 2, 3, 4 times over and still didn't stop teaching. Do you want to know when I stopped teaching? When my body crashed, right? And so sometimes even when the money's coming, our own mindset has us either overloading or not reorganizing our ways of working, or not taking the full leap, right? And it's not that my professor money was nothing compared to the business money, but I still felt like, well, why would I give this away? Well, I was giving my energy and well-being away. And then that has a price too. And so sometimes, that freedom, the cost benefit ratio, right? Of more money, less time, more stress, less money, is something to consider too, because we can also think we're not ready for the big leap when we're already there and ready. And like I said, no matter how much more you make, you're still going to feel like, I'm not at that next level yet. And I think, especially since I see so many women entrepreneurs on this call, that's something that's really important, because we can really get in our heads about that in a way that we have to say, no, girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have to define it, right?
Yeah. So we're already kind of diving in here on like the numbers aspect of things. So, like my transition story is short and sweet. I might have done the same thing as Atira, continuing to set milestones for myself while working at the Culinary Institute, but COVID happened. So I said I'd leave by June, and I left by March, because that was just the way the world worked. And I've been fortunate that I was able to make things work very quickly in a time that was really challenging. So kind of a little bit of an anomaly in a way, because I would have certainly launched while continuing to be funded at my 9 to 5 in theory job. So speaking of the things that sustain us, one of them being finance, we are also talking about like relationships and relevance and visibility. So we're going to get to all three. So I'd like to address them one at a time if y'all feel up for it, because I do think each one is kind of meaty. So let's start with finances, since we're already here. We're already on the numbers side of things. Regine, you have a very, very like specific outlook on finances and financial well-being. And so let's start with you. And then Atira, I know, let's just talk about selling also, because what's tied to the money coming in is what we're selling. So I'm going to hand it over to you two to talk through that initial part.
So I'll start. My philosophy is if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. Okay. So it's really that simple. I made more money in corporate than I do working for Shall We Wine. So I am an employee of my company. I pay myself, but I am living the life that I want to live. So my marker wasn't about reaching a number. For me, it was about reaching a lifestyle, right? So when I say, don't quit your job, what I mean is make sure that you know exactly what you want, what you need to have in place in order for you to survive and live the way that you want to live, right? Whatever that means to you. If you like expensive things and that's what makes you happy, great. If, for me, I made the sacrifice of, changing where I live because I wanted to live a life of wellness and travel and, and those things. So, but it is a business. And if my business isn't profitable, if my business cannot pay me, my employee, my contractors, then in my opinion, other people have different opinions, my business isn't successful. Now, there are many big businesses, Uber as an example, who have not been profitable, right? But they have investors and people use them as case studies all the time, right? I don't have Uber investors. I know what I need in order to look at this business and say, is it sustainable, right? Am I making enough money to sustain my life, to live in a way that I want to live, to be able to pay the people around me? That's, to me, key. And we don't talk about that enough. And we don't talk about making sure that we have someone on our team that can help us with the numbers and help us take a look at where our business is actually growing, where it needs attention, what you need to cut off. That's the real, that's the center of a business, not like traveling and drinking wine and, having events for my clients. No, at the end of the day, am I profitable, right? That is the core. And I encourage all entrepreneurs to make sure you have a great financial person who can help you determine those things.
Yeah. Atira, what about selling? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so piggybacking off, Regine gave a perfect alley-oop there in regard to it being about the numbers. So here's the thing that was the hardest. A lot of times we think about selling and we think about selling our widgets, right? Whatever our thing is, but it's important to know if we have a product or a service, right? And in this day and age, products can be services, service can be products. It kind of gets a little bit gray. But for me, what it took me too long to realize was that I'm my product that I'm selling, right? So it's my brain, my expertise, my words, my trainings, my books, right? So I'm the product. And for a long time, I tried to hide behind the things. And I had an audiobook and I put the audiobook out and I sent it to some of my mentors and people in my system, my ecosystem. And two of them came back and were like, why is your face not on the audiobook? I was like, it's not about me. It's about the ideas. It's about she said, girl, you got good genes and an amazing smile. If you don't put your face on that audiobook, you're the product, not just your voice. And from that moment forward, it reshifted the way I think about it. But guess what? It's a blessing and a curse at the same time, Because if I'm tired or if I can't show up, I can't just say, oh, such and such is showing up as me. They'll say, we don't want your colleague or your associate. We want Dr. Charles, right? And so I had to get comfortable with knowing that I'm selling me. Now I'll tell you, there's sometimes I was lazy about that. There are seasons where I've just done what comes easy to me. That's why it stood out to me, Regine, when you said I do something hard every day. That's gonna be something I take in, because it's easy for me to be me, right? But it isn't always easy for me to finish my website, or for me to say, okay, I'm gonna create some new content today. Like things that are in the push. And because I'm booked and busy with just being me, it doesn't push me as much as an entrepreneur. So I just wanna challenge everyone to say, like, if you're selling a thing or selling yourself or both, don't get too comfortable with how easy it is to be you, especially if being you super profitable and is doing well. You know, still push yourself beyond that, because selling a widget, selling a thing, it's been 6 years since my last audiobook. I haven't put one out yet because I didn't feel like selling it. Not because I didn't have the content, but I didn't feel like going through the process of selling. And now I'm putting it out in a couple of months because it's time. But it's not because of money per se, it's because it's back to relevance. So time to get something back out there for people to consume. But I'm more likely to put it out, honestly, as a free ebook than I am to sell it for $10 an hour, $10, you know, an audio book. So you have to be able to balance out the what is you, what is the thing, and if you're the thing, don't allow any insecurities, any of your vulnerabilities or anything to stop you from pushing you out. Because if you've been successful selling you, you'll stay successful selling you if you stay you. And that's sometimes hard if we have any of our self-talk stuff that gets in our way.
For sure. And I know it's a mix of service-based and product-based businesses here tonight, but just on the service-based side of things, in addition to what Atira said, sometimes it can be really challenging to price yourself at what you deserve or exceeding what you deserve, aka to pay for your admin and marketing and all the other things. And that is something that we have to overcome, because again, and at the end of the day, we have to be sustainable and we have to be earning and continuing to scale our earning wherever possible. But it is something that comes up. And so in addition to what Atira said, a lot of times also a good reminder is like, my only inventory unit is my human hour. It's like, that's the only inventory unit that I manage. I sell some t-shirts, but other than that, you know, like it's just me. So I have to price according to that. And Atira is right. People don't want my contractor at the meeting. They want me. So, you know, we have to price according to that. I know, again, that's service-based and product-based is a little bit different. I want to move into something that Tish had brought up on our planning call, which is on the finance side of it, investments. Like, when are we putting money into our businesses? We talked about outside investment, but there is something also to think about internally. So Tish, do you want to talk through that with us? You're on mute, by the way. Okay.
Yes, I think that investments come in different ways. I mean, you know, sometimes people just invest in time in you is an investment in itself. You know, I think for me, you know, similar to when Regine was saying, you know, having a full-time job to be able to be that quote unquote angel investor into Tish Around Town is a blessing. But I think at the same time, I've been blessed to, if it's not from a total financial means of investments, it's been organizations that have been invested in me. And those investments have helped in propelling my business. So if I give one example in itself, is the Roots Fund. I was part of the initial Roots Fund scholars. And they have invested in me from you know, expanding my education. So that's one like physical investment, but just the opportunities, the places I've been, the people I've saw, the people I've met. You know, I have an amazing mentor from the Roots Fund, and she invests her time in me. Then just the opportunities in itself and the access. So, you know, just to give people a little bit of background about the Celebration Woman of Wine, when planning that venture, having a partnership and a sponsorship with Dominion Estates, that is an investment in itself. And that was the reason why the Celebration Woman of Wine was something to be able to come to fruition. Well, that was also the Roots Fund making an investment in me and giving me access access, mentorship, all of that stuff plays a role. So sometimes investment is not always someone physically putting some money in your pocket. It's sometimes people taking the time to invest in you and they believe in you. You know, I'll even say Maryam invested in me from the time when we realized that we were planning very similar events. Maryam reached out. She says, hey, we're doing something very similar. Let's meet, let's talk, let's chat. And we were able to trade resources. And one of the resources she referred to me is now, they were on my first tour, and I had a conversation the other day, and they're going to be on my second tour. That's that show an example in real life of someone investing in you. So investment comes in so many different ways. And then I think it's also leveraging the relationships and leveraging the networks, being on calls like this, meeting people, reaching out, jumping in the DMs, doing whatever you think that you need to do. But, you know, reach out, talk to people, make the connections. And then I think the investments and all the other things will continue to come along the way.
Thank you, Tish. Absolutely. I'm so happy that's working out. I want to take that segue. It's a great segue into having Ray talk about relationships as resources. Starting a winery is not a small feat. It is also not an inexpensive one. So Ray, how do finances and relationships interplay for you?
Well, I would say that I started with such a small production that to call it a production is a little bit almost an exaggeration. I started with 50 cases was my first year, and that was in 2014. And coming off of that was my consulting business. So I had started learning winemaking in 2008, and I went different places. I came back to Austin and started building the consulting company with restaurants, and then it ended up turning or kind of expanding to wineries. And that was already then kind of building the way for something that I didn't know yet was coming. But what it was allowing me to do was it's all relationships. I mean, that's the only way that I have any part of my business. When I did start with that 50 case production in 2014, it was a very long time friend of mine that I quickly referred to earlier, which was in an entirely different city, and a musician friend of mine who was a food writer at the time. So good 15 years before that, we had known each other and ended up in the same place in Austin. And with that kind of depth of relationship, she decided to kind of take a bit of that leap with me as some venture capital to kind of get it going. That was what I, brought to the table was, every bit that I had financially, but as well, connections to get the fruit and the facility from which to produce the wine. And from there, then relying on the relationships that I had as a buyer in the market to then sell the wine. And I think that was by far the most important, is that with all these other things in place, that's all great, but without a place in knowing where that endpoint was, how that wine was going to sell, really none of the rest of it could really continue. So every bit of it was built on relationships, and then it just continued to grow. And I think that's still the most fulfilling part of the work as it grows. I've needed to then seek out different levels of investors. And, I started with 50 cases. I currently produce about 2,500 cases between two different brands. And so it's a very different business now, and what type of investment and things like that is, of course, then very different as well. So kind of very much seeking out and knowing that I need an investor on my side that has also that financial background and has that to bring to balance my creative energy, but the really kind of looking at, I've learned a lot in the amount of time running this business, and I will always be continuing to study all of that, but it is not my strength. So always finding a partner in there that can really look and help me break down and make sense of the numbers to then, of course, forward the success of the company is just absolutely necessary, but it's really changed over the years. But I think that still what I would say is that it's absolutely necessary for the continued success, but what it is also is probably my most fulfilling parts of what I end up doing is really it's the connections for me. And it really is about the relationships that continue to make me, even through many really tough years, getting through, different ups and downs of the business. It's that really does make me want to continue to grow it, and also bring in parts of mentorship and bring in other, really seeing then the success of people that I've worked with, alongside, and kind of just seeing that entire kind of world grow. But it's very much still absolutely dependent on relationships, and my fulfillment and sustainability just internally for my own happiness is very much built on those relationships as well.
Yeah, thank you. And you highlighted also the idea that having someone who has a stronger background in something than you do is very valuable. Regine talked about that as well in our conversation prior, that we have to be able to rely on people who have more expertise than us in certain areas. I mean, again, especially if you're booked and busy, as Atira has said, those are vital. So, this debunking financial fantasies is very important as an entrepreneur, but maintaining relationships sustains us in the long term, whether that's peer-to-peer, hey, I have a question, or someone who has been through it, or who has done it maybe differently and in your eyes maybe more effectively. Being able to reach out to people, or even ask the next person, to your right, do you know anybody who knows this? Sometimes if you don't have that in your direct network, it helps just to turn and look left, look right, who could help, So let's then talk about one of the other things we decided as sustainable entrepreneurs we need, which is visibility and relevance, and the realities around both of those things. Because again, just like if you're selling a product or a service, this is going to differ. But it did play largely into the conversation around sustainability of our businesses as entrepreneurs. So I am going to open it up to everyone on the roundtable to get through this last section that's really very important. Regine, I'm going to have you kick it off around like preparing for and leveraging visibility, and then let's just roll the conversation from there.
Wow, I could talk for hours about this, but trust me, I won't. Everyone was like, okay, let me hang up now. Preparing for visibility. I mean, so for me, PR has been key. I hired a PR person back in 2018 when I wrote my book. And I had a very clear vision. I wanted to go on a book tour. I did a multi-city tour with City Winery. And I understood the importance of a PR person because of my first business. When I had the salon, we got a lot of PR. I hired a PR person right away. So we did a lot of local TV shows and things like that to get the word out. So, I mean, unless someone has specific questions, here's what I would say. Number one, if you can't afford a PR person, you need to become your own PR person, okay? Please do not sit in your house sulking because someone else got an award or recognition that you think you deserve. You email that editor and you say, hey, my name is Regine, this is what I do. I would love to send you some information and be considered for your next article. So I have been my number one promoter, and you have to promote your services yourself, because all of those little articles, and I call them little because in the beginning they're just mentions, right? They do grow into something larger. And I would say that, whatever mention you get, you need to put it out into the universe at least 10 times. Something that happened to you back in 2016, put that out. Throwback Thursday. because all of those things are going to help you propel your business and your brand. So that's all I'll say, unless there's a really specific question, because, you know, this is where I get excited, because I could do this PR thing.
Regine's gonna have to come back for the roundtable on marketing and PR also.
Yeah, that's my thing. This is what I do.
I'm gonna work on a couple quick resources to put into the chat for everyone while you all continue to talk about this. But Atira, you brought up a really good point about relevance and why media is important. So would you talk about that?
Sure. So people ask me, oh, how do you market? I still lean towards a referral-based model. So I don't do I have not done traditional marketing digitally or in any other type of cold call way. And I always say it's because early on, I had some really big visibility moments that just stayed paying off. And if someone had asked me about those moments earlier on in my career, I would say, oh, those were nice, those were good. But I can sit here and say that over a decade of business stream has come from 2 or 3 key moments that I had in regard to publicity. I had 2 hits that were in Black Enterprise magazine and in Essence magazine that really put my name out there in a really unique way. I also had 2 or 3 conferences early on that came from the same opportunity that put me in front of thousands and thousands of decision makers. And every time I spoke in those places, I'd get more opportunities that came from it. So what I would tell you is those early moments that just seem like it's just something else as you're kind of running the rat race, have a very clear eye on what that moment can be for you. Because when I think back to those moments, while they still pay off today, I didn't take full advantage of them then. And I didn't necessarily sow into all of the relationships or do things that linked on to that visibility I had. Now I'm grateful, right, that it all went the way that it went. But for those of you that are still trying to find those moments or have had some big moments because here's the other thing as an entrepreneur, you have big moments and sometimes we don't stop to celebrate it. People in my life know I will celebrate the smallest win in the world, right? Because I know that there were times I didn't, right? And so when you're thinking about visibility, how are you aligning with media partners? What events are you speaking at? And it's okay to be discerning about it. You don't have to say yes to everything, but guess what? Some things you can't say no to. Even if it is at cost to you. Or you always have to ask yourself this question, who will be in the room that can do the next thing? And that's how I started to assess in my early career where I would speak for free, where I would have to pay my own travel to get to. All those things all led to my ability now to be where I am. And so some things come just through God's grace and favor, and some things you can go after, right? But I think keeping your mind on both of those and keeping gratitude on God's favor. I know everyone has different spiritual views, but for me, I am very closely connected to how gratitude and grace and favor impact my business, right? And that has really helped me to stay focused and aligned on the things that impact my bottom line and then also impact my passion and my joy. So don't hide from the camera. Don't hide from the headline. Don't hide from the magazine cover. And I'll say this too, there were times I didn't feel like I looked ready, right? For all the things. Guess what? The bank account was ready to receive the money.
Yeah.
So don't let that hold you back either.
Ray, what about media when it comes to the winery? How important, etc.?
Incredibly important. And that is something that early on, and, you know, that really, it was very much necessary for me to do my own PR. And luckily, I think, especially being, I think in both a business as we all are, I think we stand out in this business. I think that we also, being in Austin and being in Texas wine, which again, like I never knew I'd be in, and I think I stood out and continue to stand out. I think it's something that helped. And I also think that my approach to it was very different, having come from wine and I'm not even from Texas. So to me, being here kind of meant a different thing. because I was choosing it because I could really see the potential of this area of the world being, having great potential as a great emerging wine region, and not here to just kind of be proud of the place without other reason. And so I think that those things helped, and I found the uniqueness in kind of how I did stand out, and it just came to those relationships and really a lot of just continuing to kind of see, keep the brand visible to as many people as possible. And then at some point, then I realized that when I really needed to, I was very lucky, or, I had a lot of very consistent positive PR, and I was very visible for a long time without having someone that I was paying for PR. And then once the company kind of got to a certain size, and then certainly taking on a physical location, then it became absolutely necessary that I couldn't just hope that it was going to be consistent. And so then I really needed to kind of ensure that a little more, with also someone who had the time to really, the resources to focus on that. But it is without a doubt something that's been a massive part of the success of my business, has been the visibility overall, and looking at every part of, the uniqueness of every part of, of my business, or really for that matter, anyone else's, and kind of how they stand out in the kind of ocean in which we're swimming.
Yeah, for sure. I will add to all of this, when Maryam and Company launched Field Blends this year, I don't have a PR person. So at the moment, like, anything everyone sees is just by maintaining relevance, I think mostly on social media, and then also really for Maryam and Company strategic partnerships. So I'm going to bring Tish into this too, because we both launched trips this year. That one element that was really important was partnerships that would help amplify the message and the sales of the experience that I was putting out there. So having people understand from the start, if they were going to be involved, let's say as a venue or as a speaker, that the agreement was your involvement includes sending a newsletter out or posting on social media X number of times. And we actually could use tracking links to do that, to see who did keep their commitment. Field Blends isn't a one-time thing. I know I'm going to go back. So it's good to know, like, who fulfilled their end of the strategic partnership, And so that was just very vital free marketing, that all it took was upfront explaining to the folks that I was partnering with, this is a holistic partnership. This is what it looks like before, during, and after, and this is what's expected of you and your participation. I think we're sometimes, as entrepreneurs, can be givers. And so we forget to ask for what we need in the same moment that we're going to be giving, especially when we're highlighting, making someone else look good, you're like, wait, don't forget, I need something too. So Tish, I know for you too, that strategic partnership with Demeen was huge, because they had this whole marketing arm and set of resources for the trip that came with the partnership.
Yes, that was one thing, is that, having a great, sponsor for the celebration Women of Wine, and at the same time, under the MENA Estates, they actually built a kind of a program that actually supports me in itself, is that they have the Dream and Live It program. And that's a program that Falana Bouvier put together to be able to support minority-owned businesses, the small minority-owned businesses that sometimes need that leg up in that access and opening of the doors. And I can literally say that Falana has definitely positioned me in the Napa Valley region, that literally it is, Tish, here's the door. I've opened it, and I literally just need to walk through and see what's on the other side of it. But to have someone to be able to open the doors, and we all know how challenging the Napa Valley wine region can be from a connections perspective. There's no way I could have been as far as I am with making connections, in Napa, without having that type of door opening access. And then at the same time, I just think that strategic partnerships are so important. And we talked about this earlier, is that, making the connections, having the people that you can, maybe that's a phone call away, or knowing the people that may know the people. The one thing that I've learned in this business is that I'll say 95% of the time, when you're asking for resources, help, a little bit of guidance, I mean, as long as you're not asking for their firstborn, they usually will help you or at least throw you a bone. And it's the way that you're able to approach that. It's just a matter of, hey, Miriam, do you know someone that does A, B, and C? And just her one introduction email can be that thing that's able to open that door. So I just think that that's one of the biggest things, I think, in this business, and I think in all businesses. But I think that our wine family is kind of small if you think about it. A lot of us know each other, or we're getting to know each other, or we know of each other, some shape, form, or fashion. I think that was one of the beauties about COVID. COVID allowed us to be able to be on the screen with 20 people and actually get to know them in some shape, form, or fashion. But I think that even post-COVID, we have to continue doing that too, and doing the work with the connections, because I think it's definitely the investments back. And to piggyback on what Dr. Charles was saying earlier about, the notoriety, or, getting those articles or getting those mentions, also be ready. If you're not getting the big mentions now, they're coming, because one small one leads to the larger ones. I remember when I first started this, I was like, man, I just would love to be mentioned in an article. That's gonna be really cool. But then when the mention came, I'd like someone to tell my story. Then when my story was told, and then, I want to be in a large publication. Well, I was mentioned in Forbes, and so it's just, when the things are happening, also being able to leverage those things. And just another transparent moment from Tish is also being okay with coming out in front of that. Sometimes it takes me a few days to
Yeah.
post like a win. You know what I'm saying? I'll get the article, I'll see it, and I'll say, oh, okay, I'll keep this to myself. I text it to a few of my friends, but I'm not ready to publicly tell. No, I got to get like Dr. Charles and have a party and let everybody know,
Mhm.
So, but I got
It
to
took a
get
while to
better
get
about
there,
that.
though, Tish. It took a while to get there.
And I'm getting there. I'm being able to shine my own light, and be okay with saying, hey, this is what I've accomplished, and this publication has noticed this, or this individual has noticed this, and so you should too. And being able to leverage that, in business, and I think that goes back to our points of being able to stay relevant.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Tish. Thanks for transparent Tish moments. I love it.
love it.
It's a
I
new
love the
talk
moments.
show. Thank you all for sharing things that are just so vulnerable and so important, especially because a lot of the folks on this talk are new entrepreneurs, and all of us have a different length of time as being an entrepreneur. We've talked about like the meaning of being an entrepreneur, what it takes to sustain ourselves as entrepreneurs. So the question is, who feels like a sustainable entrepreneur on this call? And who is getting there? I think some of that's been shaken out, but I'd love to hear in one sentence, yes or no, and why. So who wants to start? Ray, Regine, you just took yourself off mute, so I see you ready.
Yes, I am definitely a sustainable entrepreneur because it is what I decided to do. So I am what is sustainable. So I know that my business has had ups and downs, and I have found a way through all of the downs. So I am sustainable. My business is sustainable until I decide to do something else, which could happen.
Yeah, that's the fun of being an entrepreneur, right? Dr. Charles?
I would say that I'm a sustainable entrepreneur, and I think I'm a sustainable entrepreneur because I think I've mastered the pivot, right? Like I've had a lot of careers in a short amount of time, and all of those that have shifted in and out, the one thing that never shifted was my business. So whether I was teaching at Florida State University, teaching at Florida A&M University, teaching at Northeastern University, whether I was the head of diversity and inclusion at Moet Hennessy, whether I was all other things, my business and my thought leadership, being able to monetize my thought leadership has never wavered.
Mhm.
And it's only, my rates only increased and my love of what I do has only increased. And so, and I'm the wellest I've ever been. My bank accounts are the nicest it's ever been. And so like when I think, and I said wellness before the money, because the money means nothing if you're not well, to Maryam's point earlier, but I wake up so happy. Like I wake up happy, I go to sleep happy. I'm happy with what I do. I'm happy to have the time and flexibility to be there for my kids, the time and flexibility to be auntie extraordinaire to my niece and nephews in another city, you know, to be a great friend to the people in my life that I love. Like I'm able to be all of me because of the way my business is set up now. And I have not always been able to say that. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
I wanted to add something. I'm gonna ask Ray and Tish also, but we keep talking about relationships, and it feels really important to echo what you just said, which is also my family and friend relationships are very healthy. Going back to that like synonym of sacrifice, I think part of sustainable entrepreneurship is not just our business relationships and our business itself, but the relationships that keep us well, fill our cups, etc., are healthy and in a good place. So I appreciate you called that out, because I think that's a tough one for some people.
Yeah.
Ray, are you a sustainable entrepreneur?
I'd say I'm still getting there. I think that because of my business model, it is something that I'm consistently challenged with, where and how best my efforts at any given moment are going to prove to be just sustainable even within that day. And so I really do think that the biggest look I've been taking is how to kind of section off and kind of take off parts of the company that really need to be really only under the very kind of just under my watch, but not being run by me. So I think that those are the things that, because it does have so many different parts to this business, that I'm starting to learn more of that, but it is very much a work in progress. And I think the thing that I would say is that in building this business, I think I do naturally like to think big, but I think I didn't fully understand how much it is to really run a full production, as well as then a physical brick and mortar, as well as then just be the head and CEO of a business to do all those things with. So I think I have been one step at a time growing in how to really learn each day how to be more sustainable, and I'm going in that direction still.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. Tish?
I'm not there just yet. I think that my definition of sustainability for myself will be once I fully transition into entrepreneurship 100%. And I just know that at the point in time I do that, I'll be pretty comfortable in knowing that I can sustain it. So I'm just kind of waiting on that day, and it's coming, guys, it's coming. I tell you, it's coming.
I feel pretty much in between. I'm two years into the business. I feel I've been able to incorporate some really great practices around sustainability. And then at the same time, I do sometimes still feel the fear. And I work every day to conquer that. Maybe that's surprising, but it's true. And also, I think for me, especially when I'm talking about being sustainable, I'm also thinking about like pretty long-term for my life. So it's always been a goal of mine to retire early. And I really want to work in the national parks when I get older. And I'm really vibing that dream still. So for me, like sustainable entrepreneurship also looks like, how can I make that second dream or that new career happen, volunteer career happen? And so, I'm trying to build to that. So that's for me the next echelon of like, okay, how is this sustainable for my long term goals too. So so we're going to open it up to questions. They have a couple more quick speed round questions for the speakers, because I think there are some great tidbits that you've already provided that we should share. And then we really would like to open it up to the participants who are here. That's why we held the meeting in this format, so that we could speak with you and receive your questions directly. So the speed round number one, we have two. Speed round number one is, what has been the most valuable source of support for your business? And Ray, you're off mute already, so I'm going to call on you first. The most valuable source of support.
Wow, that's I really would say probably just the relationships that we mentioned earlier. Just that without those, and it's a constant, whether it's just having the down moment in a day that I need to just kind of somebody help me kind of pick me back up and focus me, kind of help me get back to it, or just kind of the leaning on someone for you've got a problem wine going on during harvest, and you've got to ask a question and figure it out, and kind of that vulnerability of, I think, letting always knowing that it's okay and better to ask, rather than feeling like you have to look like you have it all together. But I would say the relationships all around me in every way, personal and professional, but I mean, that's kind of general, but I think it's the truth for me.
Hey, it's the truth. Tish, what about you? Most valuable source of support?
It's a few things for me, but I would say first and foremost, just my family support. If anyone knows my mom, let me tell you, the big pom-poms that she has, and anyone knows that if I'm traveling and where I'm at, she's usually at, and if I'm at a winery, she's usually at a winery too. So if I say, just my family support in itself, and then my friends and being a cheerleader too, and also just my wine family that's over there, cheer, cheer, go, go. And then at the end of the day, it's the individuals who believe in the Tish Around Town events, that purchase the tickets and show up and do the things and spread the word and come to event after event after event. So, and if they're not at the event, oh, I came because such and such told me, I don't drink wine, but I follow you, but I told my friend about you because of this. So it's those things, I think, that is the biggest sense of support, for me.
Awesome. Regine? Oh, Dr. Charles, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. I would say that my biggest support, I have to echo my mom, and not just because she's my mom, but because she literally is my best business advisor. She's a serial entrepreneur. She's had $1 million successful businesses. So like, to have her as the one who could advise me and watch my kids when I need to hit the road for work is a good thing. But I would also say, again, that I keep a key set of entrepreneurs around me that we could talk our ish about with each other, right? Because here's the thing, it's very hard as you climb the success ladder to be able to talk about some of the wins and talk about it with specificity, right? So like, if you really are trying to figure out, gosh, how do I get from a $15,000 speaking fee to a $30,000? You have to talk to someone who's at 30. Mm-hmm. Right? But you may not know that person, or so you have to find the peers where you can talk the numbers of your business with humility, with just openness, so that people can share. So right now, people who I can talk numbers with feel safe to me, right? Because typically that's not the case. And then people who love on me. Mm-hmm. Like, there's too many things in the world that pull away. And at this age, I just turned 40 this year. I'm just very clear that I love on the people in my life, and I can only keep people who love on me. And that includes professional relationships. There are taking professional relationships too. And there are collaborative giving relationships. Mm-hmm. And so for me in this season, that's kind of my metric for letting people in or out. Because I know what I bring. So I do have an expectation that it you know, that it's mutual, because the take is real.
Awesome. Regine?
So I agree with what everyone said, friends, family, peer groups, but I'm going to say me. I'm definitely my biggest support system, because the most important thing I've done through this journey is learn how to change my mindset. And getting the right mindset has helped me overcome so much. So I put a lot of work into reading, into questioning myself, into becoming better. So I have had to be the person to say, get up, girl. You've got this, girl. When honestly, you know, other people didn't think I had it. So, you know, it's been important for me to say thank you to all of the people who've seeded into me, but I have to also say thank you to me for doing the work. So that's my answer.
It's a great answer. It's a great answer. Yeah. So powerful too, the way we talk to ourselves, especially on a journey that does invoke fear sometimes, that does bring out those voices in our unwelcome voices, in our like consciousness, right? To tell you, you know, well, you might not make it, etc. Like to learn to talk to ourselves differently through this process is so, so important, and really is part of the journey too. Because we value ourselves, then we create that external value, you know, that shows up on our contracts, in our products, in our relevance. So this roundtable is also about connectivity, entrepreneurship. You've heard over and over, relationships are huge and very important. And we want to open it up to questions to everyone here. If you want to see everyone and you're currently in speaker view, you can, at the top right, you can click view and go to gallery so that you can see everyone on screen, and the interpreters will remain pinned. I do, though, to move us into this next step of the roundtable, want to offer an exercise for everyone to do using the chat. And what I think has been such a profound way to interact at different events, and, you know, whatever that might be, or whatever the reason is to think about like what our skill set, or what your skill set is. And in this very early stage, especially in a business, what are the things that you don't know how to do well enough, or that you need support in? That, you know, like Dr. Charles was saying, I could talk and give keynotes all day long. Like if I have to push and develop content, sometimes I like don't, you know, I'm not really there. I don't really feel like it. And so we all have hangups. So it would be great in the chat, if you're feeling up to it, and hopefully you'll follow up on a connection that makes sense for you, is to just write, I have X to give and I need X. So for example, I have connections to give. I need support understanding finances, as an example, right? And you can all take a few minutes to do this. I'm gonna go ahead and open up the conversation, but I'll type that exercise in the chat as well, so you can see it. And I just encourage
Maryam,
you.
can we have them put their Instagrams and business websites in the chat with that too? So we can do it.
And I'm not sure if Lift Collective is saving the chat and distributing it, but I know at the very least, like everyone who's been speaking today, all of our contact info is available at minimum through the website and Instagram, I believe. So maybe even some follow-up emails will happen, probably, knowing the Lift Collective team. So I'll type that exercise in the chat. I see already a question coming in. We did have a question come in earlier that I'm going to start with, because we kind of touched on it. And the question was from Michael. So how many people applied directly as an S Corp, or got their LLC first and then applied to file taxes as an S Corp? So I think that question, Regine, kind of lands on you. You started as an S Corp right away, right? Yes.
Yes, I did. And I am not an expert at this. I just followed the advice of my attorney.
Yes, I will echo that. I also had an attorney. There is an attorney I've worked with that does equity discounts. and worked with me as a woman of color owned business that gave a really great rate to help me incorporate, and then who is helping me file as an S corp. So to answer Michael's question, I started as an LLC and I'm filing to be an S corp now. Okay, we also have a question in the chat. Hold on, I saw it from Justin. Justin or Ray, this question is from Justin. I would love advice on compliance and logistics and ensuring I have all items needed to properly sell my wine. So maybe if you want to touch a little bit on that, Ray, and then, you know, maybe there's a follow-up that could be done there.
Yeah, could you repeat that? It was logistics, compliance,
Yeah, and also you all can feel free to come on video as well. You don't have to use the chat to ask your questions if you don't want to. But this question is advice on compliance and logistics and sort of having everything in line to properly sell your wine. I know that this Justin's winery is based in California and you're based in Texas, so there might be some differences in how you'd answer that question too.
Yeah, I think it gets into a lot of things that are mostly uninteresting to most other people, but I could certainly follow up with that. Mostly it's, yeah, it just gets into a lot of, it's really because state by state, if you're looking to, you know, sell outside of your state, you just have to have permits to sell in different places. So it then becomes whether you're direct selling or whether you're going through distribution. That turns into a lot of specifics that I'd happily follow up with him directly on.
Awesome. Kara is also offering in the chat some support with wholesale import experience, Justin,
Yeah.
too, just so you know. Any other questions? Because we could keep going. We could just keep we all know we could keep going. So I'm curious of the people who are also listening or tuning in, like how many years have you been in business? Have you started your business yet? Are you already off and running?
Did someone or was someone about to speak?
No.
Oh, I'm gonna jump off. Hi, I'm Sheremy of Sheremy Wine. First off, I know I owe like 3 people on this call emails. I know, I see them. I promise. I'm gonna get to them. I promise. This is so awesome to be here. People, there's so many people in this room that I have looked up to. Actually, Ray, one of my first like inspirations here in Texas, like literally followed her around Texas, literally would pop up and be like, hey, Ray. So really excited to see you here. I own a wine brand, Sheremy Wine, also Texas Wine. I am a new mom who is also still working the day job with in corporate America because I don't like to struggle, but also have my wine brand and have my husband who's also doing his own crazy thing. Like I'm coming to the realization, moving into this new part of who I am, that it's just going to be crazy. But how do you bring some structure to that craziness for you working moms? Because I'm just like, you know, oh my God, the dishes, the clothes, I have this email, oh my, you know, my kid needs to eat. And my husband, he is a great, amazing, supportive husband who is there and does everything. So that's not, you know, it's just me. How do you place everything?
So I have a lot to say about that. And I love that that's your question. Outsource. If there's any advice I've gotten from my mentors is do not be afraid to outsource. Every human has limited capacity and you only have a certain amount of hours in the day. And I think you get a choice to decide how you want to spend those hours. And money versus time is an equation you have to consistently recalibrate in your head, right? So if I think about, for me, so I just started using this new laundry service, right? It's $1 a pound. It's perfect. I love it. And when I started thinking about how many hours I was putting into managing the laundry of 3 teenagers, I was like, I make this amount per hour to speak, and I'm using this amount of hours when I could have $1 a pound and it's back in 24 hours. Oh, no, right? And so that's an example. Or there were years where I had a nanny, right, that worked a certain amount of hours, you know, at a time. And the biggest thing that I've seen with working mothers and working parents is like a guilt, right? A guilt of, I want to do it all. But when you're building a business or you're doing all these things, something's going to give, right? So I told you guys, my mom, serial entrepreneur, we always had a live-in nanny growing up. And when I was younger, I didn't quite understand it. I'd be like, Mommy, why is this lady here? You know, whatever. But now that as I got older, I realized any minute, my mom worked 100 hours a week, but any minute she was home, it was with us, fully engaged, fully sewing into us. And so my brothers and I have kind of taken that model, you know, and that's how we're choosing. And I know everyone has different opinions and values and beliefs on these things, but the model I've seen be successful for working mother entrepreneurs has been outsourcing the things that your brain and body is not required to do, so that you can put it on the things that your brain and body is required to do.
You know, that's really good advice. That's really good advice. I think for me, it's going to be like being able to do that, right? It's like, oh, but they're not. So let's take grocery shopping, for instance. I'm like, the other day, I was like, you know what? I could totally just put this, you know, go pick it up, whatever. And I'm like, but then they're not going to pick the right apple and they're not going to, I'm like, okay, Jeremy, it's too much. So completely, yes.
Like Whitley Gilbert on A Different World said, relax, relate, release, right? And that's what I do with everything. Like relax, relate, release, and release and let go the things that I can.
I'm not a mom, but I want to second that. I outsource everything. Yeah, because you need the space. Yeah.
It's actually a great segue talking about outsourcing, because we have another question that is asking about our recruitment styles or techniques for independent contractors. I mean, I can start because I really do run my business with a professional network, and there's pros and cons to every structure. Pro here is like, I know what the pricing is out of the gate. I know how to work that into a contract, and it's very helpful for me. Con, they're also running their own businesses, and I don't get to just say, hey, from this day to this day, I need you to work for me. So, you know, we have to be prepared for that give and take. Recruitment for me has been, you know, I didn't say what my most valuable support was, but it's my network. Like my network was my first client, was my advisory board, is continuing to be my resource for experts. So my recruitment, I've used my social media to do it. I've reached out to other professionals who might know independent contractors, even if they're working full time. I've actually found a lot of success with asking people in corporate what independent contractors they've worked for, especially when it comes to marketing and copywriting, because it's a weakness of mine. So that's one way. I don't know if anyone else has any other additions to recruiting independent contractors. I mean, there's also job sites, you know, LinkedIn, you could list on LinkedIn and Upwork as well.
I would say personal referral, whoever said that, but I would say interview the contractor the way that you're interviewing an employee. You know, I think the best contractors I have worked with has been from other entrepreneurs. And when I'm, you know, talking to an entrepreneur, I'm struggling, help me, and they'll say, oh my goodness, I have this great person, she's amazing, or he's amazing. So that's when that peer group really counts, because they're the ones that have helped me get the best people that I've worked with. I work with a lot of contractors. Prior to COVID, I had, I'm not lying, like 300 contractors on my list to do experiential marketing. And it could be great. It could also be a shit show when you're working with that many people. And the only thing I would say is that they're not employees, but you have to manage the relationship and the work in the same way that you would an employee.
And to that, also know what your non-negotiables are, right? Because technically you don't write that in contract per se, but you have to know what your non-negotiables are for a contractor. And don't allow like the urgency of the need of their service to make you bend on those things, because you bend once and you'll keep bending.
Yeah, we have a clause a lot of times when I hire independent contractors that I call essential results. So like effectively, it is another way of like regurgitating the scope of what they're going to do. But as soon as you say it's an essential result, it's like, I just turned your service to a product. Like this is what you will deliver at the end of this contract. Other questions? I'm going to surf the chat real quick. It's hard to do both. Oh wait, nope. I think I got all the questions so far. If I didn't, please put your question back in the chat. It's so amazing reading everyone's experience and what they're working on. I know I saw in the chat that we'll be redistributing it. So there's resources and information about everyone attending also that we'll all receive, which is great. So until we have another question, which again, please feel free, we have 8 minutes left. So I do want to ask each of you, it was a question we had prepared just in case, which is something essential that people need to know in their entrepreneurship journey or about becoming a sustainable entrepreneur. This is our second speed round, but something very essential to the core of being a sustainable entrepreneur. Regine, do you want to go first?
I feel like I'm being repetitive, but mindset. You know, everything else that you do, you are brilliant, loved, beautiful. You're going to have all these people come and support you. And that is going to be the key to your success, but you've got to get your mind right. That is it. You got to get your mind right. And once you do, everything, just like you can do it all.
Any other additions? Yeah.
Believe that there is more, right? Believe that there is more, and whatever your orientation towards things is, whether it's manifesting, praying, vision boarding, whatever it is that allows you to see yourself bigger and greater, right? It's so helpful. I remember my mom, she always tells a funny story. I was a Montessori kid, and a new teacher said, Atira has a very exaggerated perception of herself. My mom said, I know, I told her to, right? And I was like in the 2nd grade. And I think about that often, right? Because when you are trying to get to a certain point, you have to believe it to be true, right? Or believe the possibility of it. But so often in our kind of human space, we put limits of what it can be. And so just visualize, pray, manifest. Like I said, I know we all have different orientations, but whatever it is that takes you beyond yourself to see and believe something bigger, it will keep pushing you to expanding and stretching your goals.
Yeah. Tish?
I would say giving yourself some grace. Learning to give yourself some grace. I think we can be the hardest on ourselves. And then I think, you know, we talk about this quite often, and sometimes it becomes a buzzword, but we really need to kind of settle more into it, is self-care. And really give yourself opportunity to love on yourself, allow your loved ones to love on you, taking those breaks. It's funny, what I've realized is that I've never really been a beach island person, vacation, and I love wine dearly. And I've found that all of my vacations over the last few years has actually consisted of being in some shape, form, or fashion of a wine region. But I've also realized that I actually need a real vacation now, even though it feels like a vacation when it's not a vacation. So, you know how if we go into a wine region, you're in the industry, you're still like, well, let me talk to you. What about the grapes? What about this? What about this? And the wind? And you're in that mode regardless. And so learning how to give yourself that self-care. And then, like I say, one of the things I'm working on myself is the grace. Like Sherman was saying, I got to do this. I got to do this. I have be okay that you didn't send that email tonight, and that those last 20 minutes that you spent with your son was more valuable than you sending that email that you stressed yourself out about sending. The person who's going to receive it, they'll receive it the next day. They'll be fine. All of this stuff will continue to go on. The wine is still be getting, it still is getting drink, and it's still getting sold and sell and buying and everything else. So grace and self-care.
Awesome. Thanks. Ray, anything you want to close with?
I mean, it's hard to top really either of those. I, very much agree with Tish, and I think that's something that I've had to learn. And I feel like I continue to try to learn a bit of that every day. And then Dr. Charles, very much, I think every step of the way of this, kind of journey, I think has really been, I never would have known even that first step a few years before. And then I get there and I think, oh, okay, but it's that kind of allowing yourself to, once you reach it or even can see it or think it, and then allow it to grow. Because I think without that, allowing ourselves to kind of have that exaggerated, kind of view of ourselves or of our experience, we have no idea. And then it's looking back thinking like, what I thought was out of my reach was so different from how I view it now. And I think that those are everyday things. And I think it takes both sides. It takes the giving yourself grace as well as, and rest, as well as, taking those steps and realizing that that's not even close to the potential of what's really out there that you can really kind of go for and continue to just move forward into.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you all so much for being valuable contributors to the first Lift Collective Entrepreneurship Program Roundtable. Thank you to Laura and Amy and to the team at Lift Collective for bringing accessibility in so many ways to these conversations. It's really been a pleasure to learn from all of you tonight. And it's always a pleasure to work alongside you to build this industry the way we want to. So congratulations to all the entrepreneurs in the room. Keep on keeping on. You have 30 other people in this room that can support you on your journey. So please don't forget that. Rania, is there anything else you want to add?
No, I just want to say thank you. This was so inspiring for me and for everyone I know that's on this chat. And I look forward to listening to it again and just processing all the great comments and resources that you all shared. So thanks so much for everyone's time and for everyone that tuned in tonight too.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for curating a great event.
Thank you.
Thank you all.